Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. I have here Hillary Spiritos. She's the founder of Bat Outta Hell and a certified pathfinding coach who helps young adults build self-trust, overcome imposter syndrome, and create a life true to their values. With a background in academic advising at NYU and Northeastern, and an experience in the corporate world, she brings a grounded, empowering approach to helping the next generation thrive. Hillary's passion is guiding Gen Z to tune out the noise, define success on their own terms, and step boldly into a future that feels aligned and alive. Well, thank you so much for being on my show, Hillary. I'm so excited to speak with you today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So I would love for us just to begin with your story and what inspired you to create Bat Out of Hell and become a pathfinding coach for young adults.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I have always loved being a mentor or guide or advocate for other people. And I always knew that was something that I was passionate about and I was soul feeding and I was interested in. And I, the work really began when I was an RA at Duke University in undergrad. And I really just loved talking to young adults about who they are and what they wanted out of their college experience and what they wanted for their careers and who they were dating and all of these what they were figuring out what they were capable of and all of these questions that I just really loved digging into and helping them kind of find and navigate. And then when I was an academic advisor at NYU and Northeastern, I just again adored those conversations and realized that there was a gap in that young adults were really looking for someone who was an objective near peer who could listen to them that wasn't parents, friends, or a therapist, and someone who had been through what they're going through and who can help them find and navigate their path forward and help them develop the skills and tools that you mentioned earlier on, and muster up the courage to take those big steps. And so I opened up my business, Bat Out of Hell, in the pandemic, and it's been really exciting ever since.
That's amazing. I know the pandemic did a lot for everybody, and especially that generation. I remember my son, he just broke down and he was just
Yes.
crying to me. This is my oldest son, the one who's in the Gen Z, who's in Gen Z. And he was just like, I don't like this. I can't. I don't know what to do. And so I did a lot of love and compassion with him. I'm like, okay, honey, I know, I understand. We're all going through this together. And, but right now he is definitely thriving and he's doing amazing things. And yes, I feel like, because I'm a coach too, so I kind
Yep.
of coach my kids. But I know in this world, success often gets defined by like societal norms or even, parental expectations. Like I know for myself, because I was born in 1981, right? So I'm like the first millennial, I'd probably say. But my mom, she was always working, but she wasn't a helicopter mom, but she was a strict and saying, oh, you need to have it. You need to go to college after high school. You need to do it this way and this way and this way. Did I do any of it? Nope. I was rebellious.
Yeah.
And I got into my own thing, and because I wanted my own life, I wanted to be autonomous. I didn't want to be told what to do. Now, how do you actually go ahead and guide, young adults to redefine success on their own terms?
That's a great question because that really points to something that is so big in the work that I do, which is redefining these terms according to you, which is failure and success and courage and such terms that we throw around and that we think have these definitions, but they really, as you mentioned, about what society has kind of told us, what we've learned subconsciously or consciously through messaging from other people, from our parents, from our friends, from television, whatever it might be, social media. And so that's exactly right. And so what I do in my conversations with clients is helping them recognize what those deeply entrenched held beliefs or these stories that they tell themselves are. And then we unpack, is it true? Where does it come from? How, does it serve you? Why do you think you engage with it that way? What do you think you would want success to mean? What do you value? Like, what do you think failure means to you? What do you want your life to look like? And we navigate all of those questions and dig into some like really deep, honest conversations. And that helps shape kind of break down our these stories and then reshape them into ways that are helpful and will serve us in the future.
Absolutely. Now, in your opinion, or actually, what is your take on how I guess Gen Z is approaching purpose, identity, and career differently from like previous generations?
So that's a really great question because in many ways, I think Gen Z, and part of why I love working with this cohort is because I think they're pretty badass, right?
Yes.
Like, this is a generation that is not accepting this is how it's always been done. They are a generation that, and millennials as well, are to an extent, are also like, we don't accept that these previously held systems and beliefs are the way it needs to be. They're not serving us in the way that they need to, and they're pretty fierce advocates. I would also say that they are also still the victims of a lot of systems that are crumbling and that are broken and that are not serving them. And so they are trying to, we're in the process of, we're in a rebuilding where they are trying to get a grip on life that is constantly shifting under their feet. And I also think, as you mentioned, like the COVID pandemic, social media, helicopter parenting, those things make it particularly hard for this generation, as opposed to perhaps what other generations have experienced that also have dealt with this like coming of age journey.
Yes. Now, I'm big on mindset and inner work. Definitely inner work because the work works, right? And you have an amazing signature method to help young adults overcome imposter syndrome and also build resilience. Can you just go ahead and walk us through those steps?
Sure. So my process is called Aligned and Alive. And so it's a 3 month process. I think it's like three big steps because it sounds like, oh, only 3 steps. They're actually quite significant. So the first month we talk about what you really want, what you really, who you really are, what you really value, what you really want your life to look like, and try to be as honest and real as possible with the information you have. And there are worksheets and there are conversations, and we dig into that. And then the second month is uncovering your blocks and trying to figure out what's stopping you from living the life that you want. And then the third month is about revisiting and reevaluating the conversations that we had in the first month, which is, have any of our conversations like reshaped your view of who you are, reshaped your view of what you value or what you want your life to look like. And then we build a strategic and actual plan so that you feel really comfortable and confident moving forward and making those changes and taking those steps. And then we have follow-up conversations. So I'm not just like, and you're free and you can just like, you don't have anyone to help guide you as you go on this journey. I am with you as you go. And if you have any questions, I'm always here to converse and help you and guide you as a Pathfinder would be.
Absolutely. Now, can you just go ahead and share some of those powerful mindset shifts that actually have helped your clients reclaim their confidence and direction?
Sure. I think I think a big thing is redefining these definitions. So redefining what success, failure, courage, all of that means. I think it is also a huge thing that I talk about with my clients is understanding that nobody knows who you are or what you want or what's best for you more than you. So it is really important to recognize when you are giving that power to other people or looking outward rather than inward, and to ask yourself, is that true? Why are you doing that? How is that serving you? Always question, always approach it out of a sense of curiosity. And I think what also sets me apart from other coaches, perhaps, is that I really dig into a little bit of like your inner child, because I do believe that a lot of our firmly held beliefs about ourselves and our place in the world and how we should behave is locked in or is rooted in the messages that and we were in the behaviors we learned, the messages we received and the behaviors we learned as children. And so I help my clients like dig into that and uncover who they really were as children and what they really wanted as young people and help them bring that passion and curiosity and zest for life into their lives moving forward and recognize that like fear, insecurity, and anxiety is is important to own. It's important to recognize where it comes from. It's important to own it. And it because that is the way to um have be conscious of it and have ownership of it and realize that you don't want to bow down to it and you don't want to navigate your life in response to those fears.
You're so right. Now, I'm glad you brought up inner child because what I teach my son, I have like
Yeah.
many kids, many kids. I'm going to be having the fourth one pretty soon here. Not pretty soon, actually in December. But one is 9 years old. And what I love is seeing him light up when he talks about sea creatures, specifically the giant squid. And so
Right.
when he was 4 years old, actually, when he was 2 years old, he just fell in love with this creature. So we started reading books. We took him to the aquarium. We actually went to the fish market and showed him the squid.
Amazing.
Everything that he wanted to know about the giant squid, we gave him all those tools. He did an oral report of the difference between the colossal squid and the giant squid at 4 years old. An
Oh
oral
my God.
report. So
Amazing.
I really am, I agree with you, that inner child, because that's what lights him up and that's what his passion is. I always say, whatever the child's passionate, go with that and just feed him with all of that information. So he is the best at that. And to this day, he's 9, he still loves giant squid. So, I mean, yes.
Well, yeah, it's often the case, it's not a, perfect alignment, but it's often the case that what really sparked your interest as a young person, as a child, is key into what you are passionate about in the future. And so maybe your son won't go into marine biology specifically, but there might be some relation to this energy about sea creatures that, or this interest in sea creatures that he has, or just this understanding that you are fostering this curiosity and this engagement. I think that's going to be a huge lesson that he learns that like, ooh, let me just like dive into my interests rather than thinking, ooh, that's weird. Like, people think that my interests are weird. Let me hide them away in a corner and not engage with that.
Yes, as growing up, that happened to me. I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know what I wanted because society told me you need to do it this way. My parents told me you need to do it that way. Friends told me, no, why are you doing it that way? If I wanted to do
Yeah.
it my way. And so that's probably why I went to drinking, it's just to numb all the distractions, right? But I had to go through that process, get sober, then go within and then say, okay, Gina, what do you really love? And relearn everything all over again, which by the way, there's no age limit where you can
No.
change. No attachments to outcomes, I always say.
Totally. I think there are a couple things I'd like to touch on in that. I think a lot of my clients feel like once I make this decision, once I figure out what career I want or find that partner, then I'm like done with decisions. And they get overwhelmed by this idea of making a shift or making a pivot or this idea of having to start from scratch. And I would like to just say that life is going to have pivots in it, and we want to embrace that. We want to embrace keeping our minds open and our curiosity and like take seeing where life takes us and engaging in different conversations and maybe going in different directions, but also recognizing that like you don't need to be afraid of that. That's really like that's an exciting opportunity. So we want to dive straight into that for sure.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing that up. It's so
Yeah.
true. It's so, so true. And just talking a little bit about social media, because I know we touched about on that topic for a little bit.
Mhm.
I know I love social media, and then there's times where I don't like it, and that's okay. And that's why I take breaks sometimes. Like I will, like for example, I hadn't really posted anything for 3 months besides my podcast. But like what's going on in my personal life, just because I wanted a little break. I just recently posted some family stuff, and that's my choice. because people tend to go through the scroll hole, they compare, they say, "Oh, they're doing better," but everyone is pretty much sharing their highlights of their life. No one is sharing what's really going on behind the curtain. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But however, there are some that do, which those ones are great because then we're like, ah, we understand them. We get it. Thank you
Right.
for sharing your story and transformation stories, for example. But I know for some teens, social media can drown out that inner voice. How do you actually help your clients stay grounded and focus on what truly matters?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, social media is very tricky. And so, I think what's really important to first recognize is that what I say about one client, like it might work for one client or one person, but it might not work for somebody else. So, there are people that are able to say, I'm going to delete it from my phone. And that is what works for them. There are some people who are like, I'm going to take breaks. And that's helpful. And there are some people that are really uncomfortable with like deleting it and taking it away from their lives. And so we want to find what works for you. I do think breaks are intricately important. Um, but I also just make sure to reframe what social media is for you and understand it better. So recognizing that it's not a neutral platform and it's optimized for engagement, right? So its algorithm is doing something actively to you. And to also, as you said, recognize that it's someone's projected reality. So you're seeing all these people who are millionaires by the time that they're 20 years old, and you're like, oh, that's their life. That's maybe probably not their life. Um, and also understand why you're using it. So, are you looking for connection? Are you stressed? Are you looking for creative inspiration? Are you looking for validation? And like that changes how we want to engage with it as well. Um, but I think it's really also important that to note that I think social media in the what you said like is kind of trending towards in many ways an authenticity. And I think a lot of people are gravitating towards people who are authentic. And so yeah, there are people who are spreading misinformation, and there are people who it might not be helpful to follow, but there are people who are showing before and after Photoshop videos. There are people documenting their experience getting jobs and talking about how like tr tips and tricks of how to be in the corporate sector and get a job. So that's really helpful. Like transformation videos are really helpful. So I think it's important to recognize and like also forming connections is great. But we want to recognize that it's not a replacement for human to human connection. And we because that is in a world that is dealing with a loneliness epidemic, we do want to make sure that we are actually engaging with people truly.
Yes, like those Facebook groups. I think they're great. I've met a
Yeah,
lot of people on
common
Facebook.
interests.
Yeah, common
Totally.
interests,
Support groups.
support
Absolutely.
groups. I love them.
Hmm.
Now, what advice would you go ahead and give to a parent like myself who wants to support their Gen Z child in tuning out that external pressure?
I think it's the fact that a parent is actually asking that question suggests to me that they are aware that they there are external voices and external messaging or messaging that they might give to their child like unconsciously or consciously. And so that awareness is already a huge step. Um, but I think it's also just important to allow your child to explore and express who they truly are fully and be authentic. And unless it's hurting someone, to really allow them to engage their full self in their life. And I also think it's really important to not take away all obstructions or obstacles and allow your child to work through them because that builds resilience and self-trust and understanding who they are and how they solve problems and like building those soft skills that are truly important and will help them navigate the rest of their life.
Right. Yes, I love that. And Hillary, just one moment, please. My son is knocking on the door. I said, knock only if there's an emergency. So let me go ahead and just pause
Sure.
for just a moment. One second.
Is everything okay?
Yes, everything's fine. He just said he's all done reading. I'm like,
Oh,
Peyton,
great.
it's an emergency.
Great. That's so lovely.
This is what happens during the summertime. So
Amazing.
I apologize.
That's so fine.
This is the 9-year-old. Go ahead,
That's so
honey. You
fine.
can go ahead and do free time, create something creative.
Amazing.
Speaking of kids, see?
Yeah.
I know the older one's with grandma right now, so otherwise he'd be watching. It's so funny.
Amazing. No problem. Of course.
Okay, this is what I'm talking about. Real footage goes onto that YouTube channel. It's hilarious. Anyway,
Amazing.
thank you so much for sharing that. And yes. Thank you, because there's parents who have children in Gen Z that need to hear that, especially
Yeah.
me, like as a
Yeah.
good reminder for myself. And
Yeah,
let's talk a little
absolutely.
about leadership. I know you speak passionately about developing leadership in young adults. What does leadership actually look like in this new generation?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. So, leadership, again, looks different for different people and actually looks different in different contexts. And these steps or guides that I might give would resonate with different people in different ways. So, I just want to make sure that that's out there. I think leadership is really important to make sure that you are an active participant in your life and you are wanting to take control of your life. So it could, I'm kind of talking in more of a broad stroke rather than taking point on a project. That's obviously a form of leadership. Being a captain of a team, that's a form of leadership, all of those things, or just kind of leading by example in a workplace or a community or organizing something in your community, that's leadership. But I think what's really important for young adults to recognize is that they are the captains of their ship. Like they are the leaders in their own lives, and it is up to them to create the lives they want to live. And it is up to them to recognize that they are the ones that have to live with the choices that they make. So we want to be leaders in our own lives. So that means building resilience, self-reliance, self-trust, the ability to stand alone, tolerate discomfort, cultivating one's own voice, like developing one's own imagination, cultivating one's narrative, and being able to engage with other people. Developing all of these skills will serve you in good stead in your developing a sense of leadership in your own life and also being able to engage in leadership roles in different arenas because I do find that a lot of my Gen Z clients are nervous about making a mistake or doing something wrong or are afraid of the unknown or they're uncomfortable feeling uncomfortable. And we want to negate that because all of that is going to stop you from progressing like occupationally, professionally, is going to stop you from growing as a person and even perhaps going to stop you growing physically because you're not going to lift more weights if you feel like you can't do it, right? So you want to be able to engage with the world in a obstacles are potential for growth mentality.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love what you just said too. Getting uncomfortable is major, and this is what I
Yeah.
teach my son. I said, honey, you got to get a little uncomfortable here because you don't know what's going to happen. You may just find a new skill that you love.
But
I
that's how you
mean,
learn, right?
that's how you learn. And so I
Right.
try to practice what I preach. And so I try to show him, listen, Mommy's doing this new project here. I'm feeling it's excited, nervous, and I tell him, but I'm gonna do it because I'm gonna see what happens and what comes from it. And then he's like
Absolutely.
rooting me on, like, all right. And then I share him the results, like, hey, this is what happened afterward. And he's like, oh, that's amazing. So I really try to teach him what I do. And I now I'm seeing him thrive so much. So he's on the spectrum of autism, and
Hmm.
so immediately his social skills are just like not there, right? So he wouldn't have many friends growing up, and he would just be like a loner. But you know what? He's taken so many opportunities that would make him feel uncomfortable. Now he's in water polo, he's in swim. The next thing I
Amazing.
was trying to encourage him, hey, try to go to your senior ball. He's like, mm-mm. But it's so interesting.
Amazing.
Yeah, so getting a little uncomfortable is okay because you'll probably discover something that you love doing in your life.
Yeah. You'll either, well, it's really great because you'll either discover something that you love or realize that you have the skills to thrive or and recognize that you like can trust in yourself to do the thing. Or if you step outside of your comfort zone, or if you try something new in the future, you've done it before, so you know you can do it again. And the other thing is, you'll just know that you can handle it. And the more you build that, the more you will feel comfortable taking bigger and bigger risks and in the future.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
And speaking about life skills, what are some other ones you believe every young adult should go ahead and master before entering, air quotes, the real world?
Wow. I think it's the biggest, I mean, there, it depends, right? So I think the biggest thing is listening to who you are and realizing that you have the answers rather than somebody else. I think, and that's like a huge life skill, but to recognize, like, I'm gonna sit with this problem first to see what my view of it is before I open it up to the peanut gallery and open it up for others' opinions. And I think that, then there are also like interview skills that are important, right? Like conversational skills are important. Um, so it varies from recognizing that you have the skills and tools internally to also more concrete skills and tools that I think are important for young adults to recognize. And because of the COVID pandemic, a lot of people in this cohort didn't learn those skills in university or in the workplace because that happened online or that was a late start to that world. So there are different skills and tools that are needed to engage with.
Yes, and would you mind sharing a story of a client whose transformation deeply impacted you?
Yeah, I had a client who was all set to go to medical school, who was had studied biology in college and they were all set. They like that was always the plan. And they were filling out their med school applications and they just couldn't complete them. Um, they just couldn't submit them and complete them and they just didn't know what was blocking them from doing that. And they realized that like maybe this wasn't the path for them. And that was like so frightening, and which it would be. And then through our conversations and asking, is this something you want? Where does this conversation come from? Where does being a doctor come from? What is something that you wanted to do when you were younger? What about it is interesting to you? What do you want your life to look like? All of these questions, they realized or that being a doctor was actually what their parents had wanted for them, and they actually didn't want to be a doctor at all. They wanted to go in a different direction. And watching them come to terms with that and muster up the courage to have that conversation with their parents and recognize that there was a reason for this procrastination or a reason for this anxiety and recognize that they could kind of reroute themselves and they are the take ownership of their lives was really, really inspirational and really lovely to see. And during one session, I could actually see them coaching themselves through the like session. They were like, they would say something and say, well, actually, I know that's not true, but like the whatever. Or, oh, actually, like that's just something I say, but and they would course correct within the conversations with me. That was really exciting to watch.
Yeah, yeah, I remember even with my own mentors, because every coach has mentors too.
Yeah. Yeah, of
And we
course.
have coaches. And I was like, what do I don't know, how do I do this? And they're like, well, what do you think? Like,
Right.
no one's ever asked me, what do I think? They always just tell me what to do. And then so I had to think about it. And then, of course, then I gave the answer. And then they gave me guidance upon that answer. Like, oh yeah, that's or I would just say my own. I
Yeah.
would actually answer my own question most of the times, and that's what I noticed with my oldest son too. I ask him, what do you want to do after high school? And he's just like, well, I'm thinking about going into video editing. At first, it was,
Right.
making video games, and then he decided, oh, I
Hmm.
want to do video editing. So I said, whatever you want to do, just let me know, and I'll support you because this is your life. This is
Yeah,
your sole purpose here is to do the best you can do with whatever excites you the most here on Earth. And so I just support him in any way.
absolutely. I think what's really important to recognize also is that while in the moment, it might feel good to allow other people to take control and make decisions. Like that client also was when in previous conversations with their parents had kind of given given the responsibility away and said and abdicated their throne a little bit and said, "Well, what do you think?" Those kind of questions. And when you allow that to happen, you might feel comfortable because other people are making the decisions and therefore you can't make a wrong decision because you're not making a decision. Ultimately, you will feel more empowered and you will feel more in control and you and other people will respond to you in that way if you decide to be like take control of your decisions and be an adult in your life and recognize that like I'm going to make these decisions. I might not know exactly what I'm doing now, but I'm going to figure it out versus abdicating and letting someone else make that decision because that will make you feel more out of control and like you're just at the mercy of other people. And that's not a good feeling.
It's not a good feeling at all.
Yeah.
Well, Hillary, I know you inspired many of our Gen Z parents here. And if
Great.
they, how can people connect with you?
Absolutely. So my website is batoutahell.net and my Instagram and TikTok is bat.outta_hell. And you can decide to sign up for my program, or you can also decide to schedule a consultation call so that you can learn to meet, like learn more about the work that I do, meet me a little bit more, and kind of get more familiar and see if we vibe. And if you also don't necessarily think the program is right for you, we can also talk about meeting outside of the program because it depends. It's just not about slotting clients in and just making it my process. I'm really meeting the clients where they're at. And so it depends on what they're dealing with and how they want to engage in the problem. So, and the conversation. So we go from there.
Nice. Now,
Yeah.
what's one piece of advice you would go ahead and offer to someone in their 20s and 30s? Now, I don't know if I have too many listeners who are in their 20s, but yes,
Yeah.
definitely in their 30s, who actually feels completely lost right now. What advice would you go ahead and give them?
I would say there are so many things in my head right now. I would say to can I say two things?
Oh, you
I
can
would
say whatever you
say
like.
um remember, like, don't think the rules come from outside of you, meaning that this is your life. You are allowed to engage with it how you want to. There's no, I have to stay in this job for 1 year. There's no, I have to do this to do this. Like, there's the world is your oyster, and make the rules from what is authentic and fierce and real for you. And I would also suggest to take time and make sure that you, as I said earlier in this conversation, like make sure to take time for yourself to investigate problems before opening it up to other people, because then you at least have an understanding or a beginning of understanding of what sounds right to you. And the more you foster that, the more your inner voice will like become louder and louder and louder, and you'll learn to trust it a little bit more and cultivate it. And that's exactly what we want to do.
Yes, I agree 100%. Hillary, thank you so much for being on my show today. I just know the listeners are going to gain so much value from this conversation, and I truly hope they reach out to you. Yes, you're
Absolutely.
making a
Thank you so much
difference.
for having me.
Of course.